Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Sunday edition of the Bible Thumping Wingnut podcast, Google Hangout, hosted on the BibleThumpingWingnut.com YouTube channel. I am joined tonight by Matt Slick of carm.org, the Christian Apologetics and Research Ministry, and I'm also joined by Andrew Rappaport, author and has a website, strivingforeternity.com, and the Striving for Eternity Academy. Tonight we are going to talk about the Supreme Court of the United States and the legalization of homosexual marriage over all 50 states. And the question is right here, and this is my son, and he's here too. This is Evo. Say hi, buddy. Okay, so we are going to be discussing, as the title says, what is marriage and who gets to define marriage. Now, I know, Andrew, you wanted to kind of have a conversation with Matt about this, so I'm going to turn the conversation over to you, buddy.
Well, thanks. And yeah, I mean, just so we could lay some groundwork before we bring others in, I'm sure that we're going to get some professing atheists that will want to weigh in on this with Matt. But so, Matt, we know the Supreme Court ruled that people of the same sex can get married. So let me first ask, when we talk about marriage, what is marriage? What's the definition of marriage? And you're muted, by the way.
There we go.
Yeah.
The biblical definition is that one man and one woman are to be joined together. Polygamy was permitted in the Old Testament. That's another discussion. And marriage is part of the creation mandate that God instituted in Genesis 1 and 2, by which mankind is to carry out the Great Commission to multiply and fulfill the earth. So that cannot be done in homosexuality. And so, therefore, homosexuality is out of the norm, out of God's decree, out of God's design. It does not produce children. It does not encourage social development. It is not what God has for us. So that's what marriage is, the covenantal bond between one man and one woman of what that's what it is. It's a covenantal bond. Be faithful to one another, etc.
Okay, so you're making the argument that God has established the definition, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the first question that we're going to end up getting asked by people is, why would God have the right to define it? Why can't society define it?
Because God is God, not society. It's just as simple as that. God has the right because He's the creator of all things, and truth is measured by what He is, not by what the whimsical desires of society is.
Okay. So first, is marriage defined by love? I mean, are we as Christians trying to prevent people that love one another from getting married?
No, we're not. We're not trying to prevent people who love one another from getting married. We are just simply trying to uphold godly values, values that strengthen society, not undermine it. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, so if it's not for love, some people say that marriage, the reason that we need to allow people of the same sex to get married is either because of love or because of sex. They want to be able to have physical relations in that way with their partners. Does marriage somehow make that possible, or can people do that apart from marriage?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. If they want to love each other and fool around in the privacy of their own bedrooms, that's their business. The problem is that the homosexual community is trying to get homosexuality, its practice, etc., accepted in society. Part of the way that they're doing it is redefining marriage and trying to force its legalization on all people in America. Even though statistically they're about 3%, they are way overrepresented in government, way overrepresented in the media, way overrepresented, period. And so their rule, through their pushing, has now gotten the liberal United States Supreme Court to basically redefine marriage. And of course we Christians won't recognize that. We real Christians won't recognize it.
What about for tax benefits? Shouldn't we allow them to be able to get married so that they can get the same tax
No.
benefit you and I get
No,
as...
because it's redefining marriage. Should not be
Okay.
done.
So why, as Christians, would we see the issue of redefining of marriage to be an issue?
Yeah, and the reason is there's a slippery slope problem. Because if marriage is no longer a man and a woman, now it's a man and a man, a woman and a woman, then what's to stop people from saying a man and his daughter, a man and his niece, a man and his dog, a woman and her son, a woman and her nephew, whatever it might be, or polygamy, or as the pedophiles like to say, minors attracted people. So what's to prevent them from starting, and they already have, starting to push to have their sexual orientation be accepted in society? And if the gay, I call it well, we can just call America now Gay America. So if Gay America wants to say that sexuality and as the issue of marriage is now redefined for them, what gives them the right to say it shouldn't be redefined for other groups who claim the same orientation rights as they do? This is the problem.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, it's for people that say, "Oh, Matt, you're making extremes." Here in New Jersey, where I live, there actually is a case where a guy is now using the redefinition of marriage, and he is suing to be able to marry his biological 18-year-old daughter.
Wow.
And so
I'd like to meet him and have a discussion with him, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
That stuff angers me.
yeah.
And it's a form of pedophilia and incest. Well, what right does the government have to say? What moral right does it have to say? No, that's not right. Who are these men? They say it's a constitutional right. Homosexuality is not a constitutional right. It's not a constitutional right to marry someone of the same sex, but they say it is. Well, so who are they to redefine what marriage is? Just because they pass a law, it doesn't mean that that's what it is. It doesn't mean it's morally right or wrong. And if they're going to just simply say, well, look, the marriage definition is now extended to male and female, but not to male and child, male and animal, male and incestual relationships. Really? And what justifies that? If they're going to find the same issues, they're going to find, they're going to look to the Constitution and say it's a basic civil right or whatever it is that they justify it as. Well, then how are they going to draw the line? Where are they going to stop it at? And all the pedophiles have got to do, and others have got to do, is lobby the way the homosexuals did to get even more liberal judges in place in order to pass laws the way they want and force it on everybody else.
Okay, so now you brought the Constitution in. And this is an argument that many end up making, is they make the case that there's a separation of church and state, and therefore the church should stay out of these issues. What's the response to that?
I'd say keep the government out of our lives. If they want separation of church and state, usually what the liberals want is they want separation of church and state. What they mean is they don't want the state, or excuse me, the church influencing the state, but they have no problem with the state influencing the church. So their hypocrisy is just profound. So they need to keep their hands out of our business. So we Christians, for example, this is what I'm concerned about. The we Christians are now going to be persecuted. That people are going to go into churches, homosexuals are going to go into churches and ask pastors, "You're going to marry us?" "No, we're not going to." "You're violating my civil rights, we're going to sue you." This is what I'm worried about. This is the main thing. And not only that, what's to stop them from saying, now what you are is a person who promotes hate, and we're going to take your children away from you because you are someone who promotes hate and you're not fit to be a proper parent. What's to stop the state? Well, let's just look at 1984, that book, or Fahrenheit 451, or Brave New World, and these dystopia sci-fi novels that talk about the state telling the people what is right and what is wrong, and the thought police coming out of the woodwork telling us what we ought to do, what we ought not to do, and when we don't conform to what the state tells us, then what happens is they start confiscating our property and our freedoms as well as our children. These are the kinds of things I'm worried about. And if you don't think it's going to happen, Well, let's just wait and see, because we already know that lawsuits are occurred over this stuff. Now that it's made legal, you know that the homosexual agenda is going to go in, as the Bible talks about, going to go in, and it's going to start making more problems for us.
Matt, did you hear what the Texas governor did? The law that he passed, I think it was called the Pastoral Protection Bill, or the Pastoral
Correct.
Protection.
I haven't heard. Just so you guys know, I've been in Utah for 4 or 5 days witnessing to Mormons. I literally just got home about an hour ago. So I've been out of commission. Okay, so I haven't heard what's going on.
Yes. Well, go ahead, Len. Why don't you define law?
No, that's I just wanted to say, anyone who's coming in, for some reason the cameraman setting didn't work, so I'll be muting people as they come in, and I'll invite you into the conversation when we're ready to invite others into the conversation. Here's what I want, because Matt, I affirm everything that you said, and I think that within 10 years homeschooling is going to be a crime, most likely.
Yeah.
And homeschoolers are going to be targeted because look, it takes a village. You can't remove your children from the state's custody because they're not really your children. I think that that's absolutely a reality. But we're living in the now, Matt. So what are the practical things that Christians now need to be doing in response to this?
Well, let me change this. I'm actually not sure. I haven't thought it through. Just been driving, and I wasn't feeling well today, so I haven't really got through too much of this stuff. I don't know what the practical things are. I do know, however, that what we're going to do here at CARM is we're going to be talking to our lawyer, and we're going to be making sure, hopefully, that we're legally protected. Because I'll tell you right now.
Hey, Len, you muted Matt. You muted the wrong person, Len.
Okay, there we go. I'm back on. So I was going to say, right now on CARM, I'm looking on my other monitor, I'm looking at Google Analytics. We've been averaging, because summer's bad, and June's one of our worst months, we've been averaging about 50,000 to 60,000 page views a day. And it's dropped down quite a bit during the summer. That's what happens. And we'll have an average of 100 to 150, sometimes 200 people on right now. Right now, we have 446. And the number one article is, what is it on the CARM that's being accessed, is what does the Bible say about homosexuality? There's 126 people looking at it right now. This is an important issue. So we're going to be looking at it here legally, what we can do. We're already protected, supposedly protected legally, in our bylaws and in our statement of faith, that we consider homosexuality to be a sinful action, just as we consider adultery and fornication to be sinful. Now there's 454 people and 133 people reading the homosexuality issue. Now it just went to 461. I'll stop doing that because it's distracting. But what I would recommend is that Christians be ready to be persecuted. They start praying, and be ready to have lawsuits against them. The average Christian isn't going to have to worry about this. The kind of Christians who are going to have to worry about it are going to be people like myself and pastors. Because I'm going to tell you something. I'd love to be able to be given here like 5 or 10 minutes to go through Romans chapter 1 and talk about what's happening, because this is important. It's not going to just be a redefinition of marriage. Hey, everything's fine and homosexuals are happy. It is not going to stop there. It is going to stop with them coming into the churches and coming into businesses and telling us what we can and cannot do. It's going to get to the point, I really do believe this, of what we can do in our homes as far as instructing our children. I do not believe the homosexual agenda, the people who are pushing that, are going to stop. I believe they're going to continue and continue and continue.
Well,
that's what I personally believe.
In fact, Matt, I mean, the points you brought up were part of the arguments that were made in the Supreme Court when they had the hearings, was the effect that this is going to have on pastors, the effect this is going to have on organizations. Many think that this is going to be used to remove the nonprofit status for churches, which for many small churches, they would crumble if they have to start paying property tax on their church.
Okay. You know what? The church needs to be purified, and this is what happens. We look in the Old Testament. We're going to see what's going to happen. By looking in the Old Testament, we can extrapolate what's going to happen now. In the Old Testament, when the people of God became complacent and started desiring their best life now, and all other kinds of idiocy that are being taught from the pulpit, and the idea of just being comfortable and turn the other cheek and just do nothing, when we become so complacent that so many heresies are taught in the church that we're not even the ones who are the salt in the community anymore, then God allows the church, the people of God, I'll say, to become persecuted. And when that happens, then the real believers in God solidify and stand for the faith and are persecuted, sometimes executed, and the other ones, they just bail. This is what's going to happen. I have no problem with the 501c3 thing being removed so that the nonprofit status is fine, because you know what? That just frees the pulpit to be able to say, you know what? This is what's going on in our country politically, and the pastors should be speaking about it and should be doing that. We've already talked about this here yesterday. We talked about it, that if CARM loses its 501c3, which is fine with me, I'll just have to make a lot of cutbacks. If I have to get a job, I'll do what I got to do. I don't care. I'm going to continue to go through and say even more fervently what needs to be said. I think that the Christians need to wake up and start saying what needs to be said.
Okay, so one of the things, though, that is, right, so we have the court saying that these are possible issues where now churches are going to be forced to have to marry people of the same sex, or they won't be able to marry anyone. You also have
anybody. Then don't do it.
So here's the thing, though, that's really interesting is when we listen to the arguments that we're hearing in the blogosphere, is that if anybody does not believe in same-sex marriage, they should not have the right to vote.
Yep.
And that's
they
really
are not tolerant.
Correct.
They are not tolerant. They want to persecute. They want to control. They are full of hatred. Now, look, I'm going to read you a verse. That this is very important, this verse. A lot of people don't know about this verse. Hold on one second. Well, I'll mute my mic, clear my throat. Okay. I do want to go through Romans 1 because we need to, but I'm going to read the last verse of Romans 1 and then the first verse of Romans 2. This is the last verse of Romans chapter 1. And although they knew the ordinance of God, that those who practice such things are worthy of death, they not only do the same, but also give hearty approval to those who practice them. Talking about various levels of sin. Therefore, you have no excuse, every one of you who passes judgment, for in that you judge another, you condemn yourself, for you who judge practice the same thing. Now, he's talking to the Jews as their condemnation and their self-righteousness, but you know what? It fits. It fits with the liberal left because they are the self-righteous judges of what is to be right and what is to be wrong. And not only are they trying to pronounce and force their views upon everybody in this country, they want to silence those people who don't agree with them. And this is what's happening. So they are going to be trying more and more to go into churches and stop them and imprison people and have lawsuits against people because they want to be the ones in control. This is the nature of the sinful self, the sinful desires of the fallen nature of the unregenerate. That is their desire. And hopefully we'll get some of them online here and I'll have a conversation and we'll show you that that is exactly what the case is with them.
So let me ask you this, Matt. Based on those that believe in a separation of church and state. Now, first off, is there a separation of church and state in our Constitution?
There is and there isn't. Because if you read the Declaration of Independence, it says our rights are from God. So then the Declaration of Independence, according to some people, wouldn't even be constitutional, even though it's written by the guys who wrote the Constitution.
Well, the idea of separation of church and state was written in, we first find it in the writings of Thomas Jefferson. He's writing it to a church because he's a deist, and he's explaining that there's a separation of church and state, saying that the state will stay out of the church business. That's what the fear that they had, was that Thomas Jefferson was going to start bringing us back into a state church, basically a state religion. So if those who believe in a separation of church and state, though, Matt, what you're saying is that the definition of marriage is a church issue, not a state issue, correct?
Marriage is a moral issue. The state doesn't have the right to redefine one of the basic founding elements of society. The state is supposed to be that organization that promotes and protects the society, and you can only do that by promoting and protecting the family. You don't do it by destroying the family. And this is a form of destruction of the family. And the liberals are going to say, no, it's not. We're not attacking the heterosexuals. You're telling us, for example, we know that people on Facebook are now being told that they shouldn't even be allowed to be on Facebook because they don't agree with the ruling of homosexuality. When is my website going to become illegal? We know that the liberals are trying to silence us. As you said, some are saying they can't even be allowed to vote. They want us to be silenced. Where is their tolerance?
Well,
where is their tolerance? It doesn't exist.
When Carm was developing an app for the iPhone,
yes.
Was there not an issue over this, that they would not let you have an app on there because you spoke against homosexuality?
Yep, that's right. So I don't know what happened, how we got around it or whatever, but yeah, there was a problem because we weren't politically correct. Politically correct stuff is stupidity. It is stupidity. Who gives them the right to say what is right and wrong? I would love to debate on public TV that are best people about what is morally right and morally wrong, the political correct stuff. I'd love to.
Matt, can't we? Here's something that drives me a little bit crazy here with what I think even most Christians don't understand is that this decision is a full frontal assault on the gospel.
Absolutely.
That marriage is a type and a shadow, a picture of the gospel. You know, Ephesians 5, you know, that husbands, so love your wives as Christ loved the church and even died for her. You know, you see Jesus making all of these comparisons of him being the bride and the church being the bridegroom. So this is a gospel issue. And it is a full frontal assault on the gospel. And to the shame of the church, most who dwell in a pew on Sunday morning have no idea that is what is at stake here.
Well, let me tell you how. Let me connect the dots for you, why it's a theological issue and why it's a Christological issue. Homosexuality is a Christological issue in that it assaults Christ. How does it do that? Well, this is how. When it was running in the Old Testament, when it was there, God put strong prohibitions upon it. One of the reasons is because when you let your sexual mores relax, your sexual behavior relaxes as well. And then everybody starts, screwing everybody else and everything else. Diseases, problems get in, marriages break up, societies just decay. This is what history has told us. One of the things that was going on with the Old Testament is that the enemy of the gospel was trying to get the prophecies of the Messiah and the very Messiah himself, Jesus, to not be born. One of the things that he did was to have the people of Israel be assaulted theologically and morally by the nations around Israel. So God would discipline Israel when they failed and discipline those countries around them when they would try and come in and get Israel to compromise. The reason this is important is because it would ultimately, the goal was to get the Messiah not to be born, the very one who would die for the sins of his people. So homosexuality is actually an assault on the very incarnation of Christ, because if homosexuality were to run rampant and become the thing that just, became the norm, how can you have progeny? Also, how could you have the assurance that the family line prophesied by God down through history would take place? It ultimately is an assault, not only on Christ, and I could go back even further, against the created order when God said, Adam and Eve, which, I'm paraphrasing, multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. That command cannot be carried out in homosexuality. So it's an assault on the created order. It's ultimately an assault on the very incarnation of Christ and the redemptive work. It's an assault. Therefore, it is a biblically related issue. It is it's a spiritual issue. We Christians need to take this seriously.
And furthermore, I would say that it's, as Dr. James White said, that it is according to Romans 1, this is pretty much the ultimate form of rebellion that a sinner can take.
If you were to go to Romans 1 and you read, which if we have time, I can do it later, but whatever. The thing is, let me clear my throat again, because I had a rough day today.
While you're clearing your throat, one of the things that I think, we're looking at this, Matt. You're defining marriage as something that's defined by God. You started to get into it, the covenant relationship. So marriage is a picture of something biblically when God created it, isn't it?
Marriage is a reflection of the Trinitarian union of God and the eternal covenants that God manifested for the redemption of mankind. This is what I teach people when I do marriage counseling. But I was going to say, if you go to Romans chapter 1, verses 24 through 32, and you read through there, you're going to notice something that's very interesting. There's a sin and a judgment. A sin and a judgment. Hold on. Sorry. And homosexuality is the only sin I'm aware of in the Bible where when they commit it, God gives them over to it. He lets them have it. He gives it to them so that, look at this. This is verse, I'm going to just do this. Look at verse 24. Therefore, well, let's go to 22 and 23. Professing to be wise, they became fools. They exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for the image of form of corruptible man, birds and four-footed animals and crawling creatures. That's their sin. Here's the judgment. Therefore, God gave them over in the lust of their hearts to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them. Because in their worship of these animals and these things was sexual aberration. Verse 24 talks about the judgment. God gave them over in the lusts of their hearts. Verse 25, for they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, is blessed forever. Amen. Verse 26, for this reason God gave them over to degrading passions. For the women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. And in the same way, also men abandoned the natural function of the woman. Natural function of the woman. What are we talking about here? We're talking about sex. The natural function of the woman, and burned in their desire toward one another, men with men committing indecent acts, receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper. Now notice, the mind to do those things which are not proper. God gives people over to the mind, the depraved mind. People behave based on what they believe, what they understand. They don't behave based on what they don't affirm. They base their behavior based on what they do affirm. Just as God, excuse me, He gave them over to their depraved mind to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. And although they know the ordinance of God, they know that the right way to be married is man and a woman. Look at how things work biologically. Duh! And those who practice such things are worthy of death. They not only do the same, but give hearty approval to those who practice them. This is exactly what we're seeing. The celebration of sin, the celebration, legalization, and promotion of sin. This is part of the judgment that has come not only upon homosexuals, but upon our country. This is the problem. It will not stop here. The Christians are going to be persecuted more and more. And the media will not play fair. The media will not report how the Christians are being persecuted and being sued and being jailed for their anti-homosexual views and opinions. But what's going to happen is when a homosexual is wronged, it's going to be all over the front page. It's called propaganda. And that's what's going to be happening. That's what's going to happen.
Well, Matt, I think it's time we bring on our guests. We have a whole bunch of people who are in line waiting to discuss this issue. Some of them I know, some of them I don't, but I know that Matthew was the first one to show up here. So, Matthew, you can unmute your mic and address Matt Slick.
Oh, thank you. Can I be heard?
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. Thank you. Good evening, Matt, Andrew,
Hey,
Len.
how you doing?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for taking my questions. If I could start with just three really simple questions, and I guess I'll direct them to Mr. Slick. First of all, one, does God define idolatry?
How does God define idolatry? That honor...
Does...
I think he froze.
His question was, does God define idolatry? Not how does he, but does he?
I don't know how we would, okay, when he says define, like the word good, we go to dictionary.com, good, it's defined. Does he mean, does God take the word idolatry and define it?
What I'm saying, you open very early on in your discussion saying that God defined marriage. So I was just asking you if God also defined idolatry.
Well, God describes what marriage is, and he describes what idolatry is. Are you a Christian?
Okay, so by the same way that you say God
Matthew, since you're having some tech issues, I think we're going to move on to... Oh, are you okay? No,
yeah,
you're frozen up
if I'm
again.
not being heard, then...
Well, no, you're breaking up. Are you a Christian or not, or what?
Yeah, he's frozen up.
Yeah.
Matthew, what helps maybe is you may want to just jump off the call, hang up, and jump.
Before you jump off the call, Matthew, if you go up to the top, there's a triangle. If you hover up toward the top, it'll have 4 bars. You can click on that and start knocking your, maybe if you're trying to send things at high definition, or just do that and just do audio. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just took it down to very low from HD,
Okay.
so...
It's great now.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, the first question was just, does God define idolatry? And I guess I qualified...
He gives example. He gives an example of what it is, serving and worshiping those beings and ideas and things, whatever it is, that are not proper to God. Okay?
Okay. Second question is, does God forbid idolatry?
Yes.
And then the third question is, does the U.S. government allow idolatry?
Yes.
And just to extrapolate from that is then, how is idolatry different from homosexuality?
Spelling, for one thing.
And if that's it, that's fine, because I would agree with you. I believe that the Bible does say that homosexuality is wrong, but I see no reason why the U.S. government needs to adhere to that for all of its citizens in the same way that it doesn't need to adhere to the idolatry prohibition.
Okay. All right, what are you? Are you an atheist or what?
I would call myself an atheist, but I don't enjoy discussing labels, if it's going to come to that.
So homosexuality is a good thing then?
I don't know that I would call it that.
Is it a bad thing?
No.
It's not bad, but you wouldn't say it was good. Interesting. So which is it?
I think that's a false dichotomy. I think that homosexual rape, for one instance, would be a horrible act. But I think consenting homosexual love...
Why? Why is it wrong?
Why do I think that homosexual rape is wrong?
Why do you think it is?
Around... Shall I try again, or do we want to move on?
One more time. Why is it wrong? Yeah, you're freezing.
The well-being of conscious creatures. All right.
Matt,
yeah, you answered my question, so
try taking your
you.
video off and just go with audio, and then at least we can hear you. Yeah, let's try that.
One more time. I'm trying to show you something, okay? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm getting someplace. Why is, for example, homosexual rape wrong?
In the case of rape, where someone doesn't give consent to a sexual act, that sort of by definition is wrong.
Oh, really? So it's ontologically wrong by definition. The nature of something has an ontological issue of wrongness and value and moral value to some. So you recognize then, or you try and say that there are certain actions that are by nature wrong. You can't do that in an atheistic world.
Within the context of sexual behavior, when consent is removed, by definition, something wrong has transpired. That's what I'm saying. We're talking about a very pointed, single act of something.
You're not understanding what I'm saying. All you're doing is saying by definition. You're just saying someone defines it that way, and that's why it's wrong.
Right, it's an assertion.
Okay, now you're just asserting it. That's exactly right. You're just saying it's wrong. Well, that's just your opinion that it's wrong. So your opinion, no disrespect meant, you're entitled to your opinion. Should your opinion be the majority view on America?
I don't really care because
Okay.
rape is illegal, and we have very strict definitions of what constitutes rape in the law. Okay.
So then what you're saying is whatever society defines it as. Do you see the inconsistency? Do you see the problems? Society is simply, yes, there's a problem. Society says that rape is wrong, so therefore it's wrong. You
Let
just
me
want to
clear up
say
how we
there
got
is no
here.
reason for you to say that it's right or wrong other than you arbitrarily set a standard for what you say is the standard by which we judge what is right and wrong. I mean, that's what you do. As an atheist, you do that. But you don't want to live in a world like that. You want to live in a world where the morals are not based on atheistic ideology or your perspective. You want something other than that. You're inconsistent. And this is the thing I'm trying to show with the liberals. They are inconsistent. They don't think these things through.
Can we backtrack to where we got off course?
Well, the thing is, Matt,
I'll take that as a no.
if 5 judges said that rape is legal, is it then therefore moral? If the Supreme Court
Are
were to
you
pass
addressing that
that
to me or
law,
the other man? I'm sorry, I don't mean to be.
That's a great question.
no, I'm asking you, Matthew. I'm sorry, I'm asking you, Matthew, because if 5 Supreme Court justices made it legal in all 50 states for rape to be legal, is it therefore moral?
No, not in my opinion. Absolutely
By what
not.
standard?
We could get into what my standard is for what makes something moral and immoral, but we're veering further off course because as I wanted to go back and explain how we got to here.
I don't think that's off course at all. Basically, what you're doing now, Matthew, is you're trying to push your opinion on others. You know, you're saying that it's wrong because of what is your plumb line? What is your plumb line, Matthew? Well, yeah, you're saying it's wrong, but you can't account for it. See, what we're saying it's wrong because God is our standard. What is your standard? Let's take that standard and bring it to its logical conclusion.
The slippery slope.
If you are not going to agree with its logical conclusion, you are being a hypocrite. So what is your standard? And let's deal with it from there. Why is that wrong? Is it the judges?
As I said previously, if we wanted to get into what my specific criteria is for what makes something right and wrong, we could do that, but that would take us away from where we've already gone off course, and I was trying to bring it back to that because we're sort of conflating words like illegal and moral right now, and the only thing I raised was the idea that God defines idolatry in the same way that he defines marriage.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't define it in the same way. If he did, we wouldn't need 2 different words.
Just like they should and they do now allow homosexual marriage.
No. Homosexuality is a sexual act, but idolatry is a spiritual attitude. They're different. They're different, okay? Both of them are self-serving.
And they're both forbidden.
They're both sin.
But they're both allowed by U.S. law.
God permits us our sin. He permits you your atheism and your rebellion against him.
Absolutely, he does. And the U.S. government allows me to be an atheist.
Wait a minute. You just admitted God allows you that, Mr. Atheist?
No, he said the government.
He said the government.
He said, yes, he does, and the government also. God allows you your atheism. You said, yes, he does, and also the government, blah, blah, blah. You just slipped.
You said that God judges me, or something to that effect, for being an atheist. And
no,
I said
he permits you to be an atheist.
Okay, correct. And the government permits me to go about my life as an atheist. It doesn't force me to
It's not the government's job to permit you.
Or Yahweh, like Exodus 20, verse 3 states. God commands that you have no other gods before him.
That's right.
The U.S. government doesn't hold up that same standard. In the same way with idolatry, and in the same way with the way they treat their homosexual citizens.
Okay, whatever. But let me ask you. So when someone says he wants to marry his daughter, what do you say? Okay?
Am I like role playing as a register as
no, I'm asking you.
Member of City
If
Hall?
someone says they want to, you're an atheist. If someone says they want to marry their daughter, is that okay?
I would advise against it, depending on the age of the daughter.
Oh, so if the daughter's, say, 25 and the dad's 55, is that okay?
I would advise against it, but if the daughter is 6,
okay? Is it
What do you
okay? I
mean,
didn't ask
is
if
it
you
okay? It's not legal.
Is it moral? Is it right? Is it good?
Why is it not legal? We
So
just redefined marriage.
in most of the state, okay.
We should go on.
Have either of you read the opinion of the court for
I
the
want
recent
to.
Supreme Court case? All right, I would
I
advise you to
didn't
do
get
so
through the
because a
whole
lot
thing
of
yet,
these
no.
slippery slope things you allude to, pedophilia, polygamy, bestiality, churches being forced to marry same-sex couples,
Dude, it's
invoking
here.
people's right
Wake
to
up.
vote. None
Let
of
him. I want to hear him. I want to
it's
hear
not
what Matt's saying.
It's not here, Len, and there's nowhere in the court's opinion will you find any kind of language that supports any of those claims. There's no way that you can use the Supreme Court case to justify any of these fears.
Matt, once you start redefining marriage, where do you stop?
Okay, well then let me follow up with this question, because earlier you said the state doesn't have the right to redefine foundational principles of society or something to that effect, alluding to marriage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then do you disagree with the decision the Supreme Court came to in their ruling on the case Loving versus Virginia when they redefined marriage to include biracial couples?
Well, you see, then they agreed with the revelation of God because God never condemns that. So what they were doing was coming in compliance with biblical revelation. So I have no problem with that.
Okay, so as long as the state gets sort of closer and closer to what you see as the biblical definition of marriage, it's good, but
Absolutely. Because where are you going to stop this redefinition of marriage? You can't tell me that the system is going to stop later on, 5 years, 10, 20 years, whatever it might be on the future, that it's not going to be dealing with issues of polygamy, polyandry.
Do I know for a fact that the Supreme Court won't hear cases like that in the future? Absolutely not. They very much could, but nothing in the opinions that were the majority opinion that was released this last week could be in any way attributed to cases for the on new things, and you would have to completely restructure the way we do marriage contracts with multiple partners, because right now it's a two-party contract.
Well, we've already redefined it now with marriage now.
Yes, we've redefined it several times.
And where's it going to stop?
I can't tell you that.
Well, currently it's not marriage equality, because if it was marriage equality, it would be equal for anybody, for someone to marry their daughter, for someone to marry, their mother, for someone to marry anyone they want to marry. That would be equal. Now it's, and again, people talk about marriage equality, and it's not equal, but yet you still say that someone marrying their daughter would be wrong.
If you want
what
to
is
talk
your standard on that?
Marriage equality, what you're talking about is a colloquial phrase that's been used by a particular movement for this one thing. If you want to sort of, again, attribute that to equality for all, then you're sort of blowing that out of proportion. And I would, again, advise you too, sir. I'm sorry I don't know your name, but are actually doing, and the reasons that they give for doing it. And you'll see that there's absolutely no application for dogs or inanimate objects.
Okay, but would someone marrying a dog, would that be wrong?
It would not be a marriage, because a marriage is a contract between two people.
Well,
according to the state.
That
comes along with
so the state sets.
Let's redefine
the state is the standard then.
Yep.
They're the ones who define it. Absolutely, it's a state contract. You go to City Hall and you get
so
a marriage
it's okay because the state says it's okay.
And once you have that marriage certificate that was given to you by the state, then you are now eligible for over 1,000 rights and privileges granted to you by state and federal governments.
Okay,
except
so
the state stole that. Hold on, the states took that from the church, and that's the whole thing. It's a church issue.
You can absolutely make that point if you'd like.
But the thing is if there's a separation of church and state, then the state should not be in this issue. Period.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
no, I
if
absolutely agree with you
Amen.
that this would be a lot better off
Okay.
if there wasn't this bridge. But since we have this bridge already, then in an effort to take the simplest route to granting all of citizens, regardless of their sexual orientation, the same equal treatment under the law is guaranteed to them by the 14th Amendment, it makes more sense to go this route than it is to restructure the entire code of inheritance law and
You're going to have to worry about it because they're going to redefine marriage.
So the court, does the court dictate morality then? So if the court says it's okay to marry a dog, is it okay to marry a dog? Is the court
Okay.
your standard of right and wrong?
Hold on.
Is that
Hold
what
on.
you're saying?
Guys,
We're just moving along.
Guys, let's move on. We have a lot of people.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
A
Thank
lot
you very
of
much
people
for the
waiting
time.
to
I really
join. Hey,
appreciate it.
Matthew, thank you for coming on. You're welcome to come back in. We want to get to as many people as possible in these calls, and so I think that B is next. B, if you want to unmute your mic and address Matt Slick.
Hi, guys.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Matt, I don't know if you recognize me, but I'm Kylie, the atheist girl, so I have met you, so you do know who I am.
We've met?
So, yes, of course.
Where?
At your house when my husband and I came over
Oh,
there.
Kaylee!
Kylie, yes. Yeah.
Kylie, you've lost weight. I mean, we'll gotta be careful what to say.
Wow.
Sorry, I mean, oh boy, that came out because.
Right. I got it. No, it's all
No,
right.
you're looking good there. Okay, I mean that.
Thank you.
Nice. I'll just shut up now.
Okay. All right. You need to get yourself in trouble. No, I had
How
a
you
question.
doing?
I'm doing good. Really good.
Okay.
I had a question, kind of some of the stuff that Matthew was saying, but the first thing I was going to ask is the fact that we all live, whether we're atheist, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever, we all live in, I guess if we just take the U.S. In this example, we all live in a place where we have to figure out how to get along, right? We have to make laws that are going to work. Do you guys feel like we should force people to adopt Christian beliefs? Do you feel like that's something we should do?
No. We shouldn't force them.
Okay.
But then on the other hand, yes, we should. There's a yes and no. As you yourself would force somebody within reason to stop somebody from beating somebody else.
Sure.
You'd force there's certain things we would say yes, there are certain things we would force and certain things we would not force.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say, Christians want to force everybody to believe or have the subject themselves to our laws? Well, yes and no. We don't want them to murder. We don't want them to rape. We don't want them to lie and to steal. And these are all Christian principles. So we'd like everybody to be. Okay, so homosexuality, the same thing goes. We should not have homosexuality be a free right in America that is politically protected. It's not just politically protected. It's now protected, not only protected, but it's like a sword.
Well, I guess the point that I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
the point that I was trying to get to is that, there's certain things that I think most people, whatever religion they're of, can kind of agree on. Things like, no, we don't murder, we don't steal, there's things we would have to work out. But just the fact that we all have to live here, whether or not you like that I'm an atheist, whether or not I like you're Christian or the other person's Muslim or whatever, we all have to live and exist in the same space. And I don't think that any of us want to live in a place where one religion or one way of thinking rules over everybody else, because that doesn't seem fair, unless you're the one that's in the majority, right?
What if it's good, healthy, and better?
Well, but again, that's kind of according to you. What if I think it's? This is the argument. I don't want to get into like how we determine whose is better. It's just like the fact that there is going to be differences of opinion. Like even if you go from the Bible. It says in the Bible, obviously, there's going to be people that will never accept the gospel. They will never, no matter how much you evangelize, how much we show them that it's true, there's going to be people that will never accept it. So it's kind of like, how do you square the idea that do we have to make them accept certain things? Or do we say, well, we have to live together, so we need to find a way that works for everybody?
Christians have no problem living with homosexuals.
Okay, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in terms
they have a problem living with us.
Well, I've seen it go both ways, honestly. So it just depends on the situation.
To be fair, there are Christians who claim the name, people who claim the name of Christian, who go out, for example, and beat up homosexuals. That is not Christianity. That is not biblical. It is not what's to be done, and I would stop them, and I would defend the homosexual at that point. So that's not what Christianity is. We can have misrepresentatives of both sides. But there is a homosexual agenda and profound movement to get that moral belief system not only accepted but promoted in society. So here's the thing. You'll say, do we have the right as Christians to want people to believe like we do? But then are you asking the same question of the homosexual agenda people? They're doing that very thing.
That's a good question.
Why don't you complain about them? Say, what gives you the right to do that and try and get the laws changed?
Well, I think that's kind of what I was going to follow up with. Is it because it seems like what maybe you are upset about or what you don't like about it is because I was writing down a couple of things when you were talking about like the self-righteous judges will force their views and pushing their opinions on people, but I don't understand how that's not what Christians are doing by saying you guys all must agree with us because these are the laws you have to follow. No.
We're not forcing it. We're not forcing it. The judges are forcing it. So let's say, for example, I don't know the statistics, but I think it's something like 60. At one place, I heard 61% of. You'll get my point. Let's just say 75% of a certain community or state is against homosexuality. Then the judge comes in, after all the laws have been passed, whatever, the judge comes in and says, no, strike it down. The one judge then forces his opinion on everybody else.
Sure. But then I guess...
Where's the LGBT community complaining about that?
So if in that situation, if that was in a community that that the percentage was swapped to like 60% of them wanted it, then would you not have a problem with it? Is it just the fact that the judge is forcing their opinion?
Then we have to go through debate. Look. Why is it that the majority of people don't want homosexuality? They work hard. There have been petitions, and people have voted, said, no, we don't want this, we don't want this, we don't want this. And the judges force their liberal opinions on everybody else. And then the LGBT community, yay. Then the Christians say, we don't agree with what you're doing. And then the LGBT says, we don't want you forcing your opinion on us. We don't want you forcing your views on us. The hypocrisy is profound, and they're not even bright enough to see it. Now, this is an important principle. We behave based on what we believe. We behave based on what we believe. They believe that homosexuality is morally right, and by necessity, they must believe that our belief that they are wrong, our belief itself is wrong. They will behave based on their ideology that we are morally wrong. They're going to then work to get their views put upon us, and they're doing it.
But I don't disagree with any of that you just said, but what I don't understand is how then you don't see what Christians or you or however you want to frame it are doing the same thing on the other side.
How are we doing it?
You believe that homosexuality is wrong. You believe that your ideas about morality are correct and that people who are liberal or atheists or whatever are incorrect. And so you are pushing or trying to get your views, your set of views, in a form so that other people can't violate them because you believe that bad things will happen.
How are we doing that? How are we trying to do that? How are we Christians trying to get everybody to behave as Christians? How are we doing
that? Well, not maybe behave. I'm not saying you're trying to make them behave a way, but you're saying we are going to, by making laws that would not allow people that don't believe the same way as you do to marry, you're basically saying you must accept our definition of marriage. You must accept our definition of what this looks like, is what you're saying.
Wrong? Is that wrong for us to do?
Well, I mean, to me, it's not a matter of wrong, because if you want to go back to the whole argument of how can I say something is wrong because I'm an atheist, I'm not really interested in that. I'm interested in the fact that
if you say it's wrong for us to do that, you have to say that it's wrong for the homosexual community to do it.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's true. I think that the only way that we can ever find common ground is to say, we all have to live together. Like I was saying, we all have to live together.
We're not living together.
Well, everybody in the U.S. we are. We're all.
No. Let me ask you a question. What do you think true Bible-believing percentage, what's the percentage of the United States population that you believe I don't know your exact number, but you get it out. You get what I'm saying here. What would you estimate is the real Bible-believing population, percentage-wise, of the country?
The real Bible-believing You
Yeah,
mean like people who
I'd
are
say,
real Christians, or just say that
yeah,
they're Christian, or what?
real
I have no
Bible-believing.
idea.
I'm
I
going to
have
just
no
say 15%. I'm just going to say 15 to 20%. That's my opinion.
Okay.
What would you say? More or less, roughly?
I have no idea.
Okay.
No idea.
What do you think is the percentage of homosexuality? The people who claim to be homosexuals in this country?
Claim to be homosexuals?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
3%. That's the
Okay.
statistics, 3%. We know that there's far more people who claim to be Christians than homosexuals in this country.
Okay.
All right, now, on TV, how many Christians are portrayed favorably?
I guess it depends on what you're watching.
How many are? Give me one show where Christians are portrayed favorably.
I don't actually watch a lot of TV.
Movie, show, whatever it is. How many shows are you familiar with that have homosexual characters?
They're pretty favorable now. I mean, if you're going from if you're talking about the normal media, I don't know. I don't know what it is.
The normal media, we have homosexual characters on The Simpsons. We have homosexual characters in sitcoms. We have homosexual characters in varying, whatever it is, in a lot of movies, in a lot of interviews, in a lot of situations, and they're portrayed favorably. Christians are not. Here's the thing: the homosexual community wants to be represented fairly, but they don't want the Christian community to be represented fairly.
So
homosexuals, they're hypocrites.
Okay.
They're hypocrites. They're not playing fair, and they're not going to play fair. They're going to continue in the hypocrisy and the oppressive manner that they're working with. That's what I'm concerned about.
Okay.
You talk about getting along, Kylie, you and I, you sat here in this office. We get along great. We disagree. You're awesome in that respect. No problem. That's not what they're like. A lot of homosexuals I've met, they don't care. Hey, just leave their churches alone. Stop it. That's not what's happening. They're trying to shove it down our throats. They're getting the laws changed. They're trying to come into our schools. They're all over the media. They're pushing. And if we push a little bit, we are called those who are trying to oppress them, and then they cry separation of church and state.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that there's not people out there that are, militant, whatever.
Militant.
But there is, to be fair, there is Christians who are the same way, and that will,
Sure.
I just feel like that's kind of I mean, when you're saying like they're not playing fair, they're being hypocritical, whatever, but that's like whether or not they're playing fair doesn't mean that you should change the way that we approach the situation. We should say, what is the best way to all live together? And if you guys are acting like jerks, whatever, but we're still going to approach this in a way that's fair to everybody. We're not going to change what we're doing just because you guys are being hypocritical.
Let's have them be fair. Let's have them start representing Christians and have Christian characters and Christian people on shows who are a far greater percentage of the population than homosexuals, and have them portrayed favorably instead of negatively as hypocrites. Every time I see a show on TV, if a Christian's there, I say to my wife, oh, is he going to be a murdering rapist or what?
Right.
Because that's just how it is portrayed with Christians. Homosexuals, they want equality. They don't want equality. They want superiority, and they want, because as Romans 1 says, they give hearty approval. In order to do that hearty approval, they have to resist those who resist them. You watch, Kylie, what's going to happen is there's going to be lawsuits. There's going to be people are going to say, pastors are going to do civil disobedience. There are a lot of pastors who said that we're not putting up with this. I'll probably end up going to jail. I'll probably end up going to jail for saying, no, I believe homosexuality is a sin. For saying it, for having an opinion, for exercising my religious rights. I'm probably going to end up in jail for this.
Well, I mean, and if you did, I would say that was wrong. I mean, and like what you're saying, okay, sometimes I'm not homosexual, so I can't, speak for them, but like when you talk, a lot of times when you talk like on your show or in different situations and you talk about atheists, well, atheists do this and this and this, but knowing that you know me, we've met, and you, like you said, I'm not like some of these people that you're describing, so I have to kind of say, most people make generalizations, like just because you met one Christian that's a jerk, then you know logically you can't really say that all Christians are jerks, but we all do that, right? So I don't I mean, maybe I just have never encountered the people that you've encountered that are homosexual, but I know a lot of people who want, what they want is to be able to have a voice and be heard and have the same rights. They really want to be left alone for the most part. They don't want to be, for sure there are people that would like to exterminate Christianity and all Christians and put you guys in jail. Sure. And there's also Christians that want to kill homosexuals. So you guys have to like take off the extremes and look at who's in the middle, which I think is the majority of us are in the middle, that we would like to get along and find a way to make the world work together. And that's the people that need to have the discourse, not the people on the extreme ends, because I don't think they represent anybody but themselves, really.
All right. I would agree with that.
Matt, go ahead and respond, and then I'd like to move on to our next one, so we can get through all our people.
And by the way, Kylie's awesome. She is. She's a great person. I really like her. But yet, what's happening in this country is the minority is now pushing its will upon the majority and getting marriage redefined. So if it's the extremes that we're going to dismiss, then how is it that these little extremes on the ends are accomplishing so much if they're just extremes?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess you'd have to decide how do you, I mean, then the follow-up question, I'll keep it short, is just like, then if somehow this becomes not a minority, if then the majority of people in the U.S. want this, is your argument going to change? I don't think it would. I don't think you would be okay with that.
Well, ultimately, then I would just say, no, God has spoken, and I must adhere to what God has said over man, because we know societies very often move away from what God wants, and they often fail because of it. But that's an issue of, does God exist? Is Christianity true? And a debate for another time.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, guys.
But come on back over sometime.
I will.
Okay.
Bye.
She's really nice. She lives just on the other side of the border from me, and I'm pointing that way, Oregon. And she's been over a couple of times. She's really sweet. She really is. She's nice. Unlike Chad.
Chad, unmute your mic, and it's your turn to address this. I know you've been chomping at the bit.
No. I will not talk to Chad unless you apologize for your little teasing insult. You don't apologize to me right now, I will not talk to you.
I'm sorry. You want an apology for?
Okay.
Can you talk?
I'm not talking to you.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Not
talking
to
you.
You.
Can you hear me?
I'm not talking to you.
Can you hear me?
An opportunity. Yeah, Chad, I said yes.
Chad, we can hear you, but what we need to hear is an apology to Matt Slick for your insults.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I insulted him. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, goodbye.
I said I'm sorry.
You said you don't know what it is. Why would you apologize for something you don't know about?
Right. Okay, he's gone.
Okay.
I believe that next up will be the polymath.
Can you talk?
All right, if you've just joined us, please mute your microphones. We're going to talk to people one at a time. The polymath is up next. Go ahead, address Matt Slick.
Hello, everybody. I haven't spoken to you in a long time, actually. You specifically, Len. So, I've been really. I'm an atheist, but I went to church with my parents today. I've always been curious regarding this issue of homosexuality. How do you guys define homosexuality? Do you think that the gay sex is sinful, or do you think that the sexual attraction is what is sinful?
Both.
So you think that because there are like Christians who find themselves as being, gay or lesbian who wish to remain celibate, but you're saying that the feelings themselves are sinful.
Yeah. Can I explain?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, for example, I have a natural desire to lie. And I don't lie. I've mastered it, but I have a natural desire to lie. And so that standard, that part of me is ungodly and unholy, and by definition is contrary to the will of God, and by definition it's sinful. That desire itself is a desire to do that which is contrary to God, so that desire is sinful.
Okay.
And if I were to carry that out, that would also be sinful as well.
I see.
So We recognize that, yeah, of course people have problems. You know, of course there are people who might be attracted to people of the same sex, and they struggle with it. They have my sympathy. They really do. I don't go out there and point fingers and yell and say, "Oh, you sinner, you're going to hell." I go, "Ah, dude, man, I'm sorry. How can I help you?" You know,
That's,
we work with it.
but are you comparing homosexuality to a desire then?
Of course, it's a desire. Would you agree? What's your first name? What's your name? What's your name?
Just call me Chuck. Chuck.
Okay, what's up, Chuck? Would you agree with me that people behave based on what they desire or based on what they don't desire?
Well, I wouldn't call homosexuality a desire.
Okay, let me ask you, do you agree, or do you agree or not agree, people behave according to what they desire or they behave according to what they don't desire?
Well, it depends on the situation.
Can you give me any situation where someone's behaving in a manner that they don't desire?
Sure. If a guy, specifically regarding to homosexuality, wants to find who is so oppressed by, you know, all these pressures to conform, quote unquote, and then he finds himself, you know, he marries a woman, but he knows that he is gay. You know, he doesn't desire a woman, but it's because the sort of pressure to, I guess, conform to heteronormativity.
Chuck, then what I could say then is then his desire to conform to the heterosexual component is stronger than his other desire, so he would still be behaving according to his desire. See, no matter what you say, I can just say that if I held a gun to his head and said, jump up and down, he doesn't really want to. He will, because he desires to live, and so therefore he behaves in a manner consistent with his desire. Okay,
then I guess, I mean, if you define it that way.
Well, the point is that homosexuality is a desire. They call it an orientation, right? Well, if it's an orientation, it doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong, unless we have a standard. This is my desire, my orientation for women. I mean, I'm married, happily married, but I notice women, and I don't say I lust after them. I don't undress them. But let's just say I was doing that, which I don't. But let's just say I was. Well, that would be a sinful thing to do. It would be wrong to do. And so, just because we have an orientation doesn't mean the orientation is okay. If I was oriented to lie all the time, well, doesn't mean it's okay.
What would you say to?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. What would you say to a Christian who does, in fact, find himself or herself to be attracted to someone of the same sex and who has tried? Because I just watched a documentary just a couple days ago on gay conversion therapy and the horrors that come with it. And,
it's biased. I know homosexuals who've left their homosexual lifestyle, become Christians, and left it and are quite happy. It happens. But I'm sure the other side happens. I'm sure that thing only shows one side. That's all.
Well, I mean, regardless of what you think, I'm saying that to them, it would be like, because I know people who are gay, and they would say that, you know, being gay to them is just how being heterosexual is to you.
I understand. Does it make it right?
No, but I'm saying that for that same reason, regarding, you know, gay conversion therapy, quote unquote, I mean, you can see where the psychological damage could come from in that sort of thing, because
absolutely.
I mean, you're trying to change the way people are, and people.
It's hard.
The way that people have known themselves to be from the time that they've been, you know, around the age of 5 or even younger.
Yeah, I understand. And as a Christian, I'm very sympathetic to people's struggles. I certainly have struggled over the years on various things. Believe it or not, you know, aside from here, I mean, I'm very compassionate with people and trying to empathize with them. Don't try and shove things down their throat. People have struggles. When they recognize that some of their struggles are sinful, that they should not do certain things, then they have responsibility to act in a manner that's consistent with righteousness. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And I sympathize with them in their difficulty. But just because someone is born a certain way doesn't mean it's okay. The argument that the homosexuals give us, that's my orientation. Well, if that's what justifies it, then a pedophile's orientation justifies them. And if they're going to say, no, it doesn't, well, why not? It's the same argument you're using that he's using or she's using, whatever.
Well, actually, I mean, there is an argument that, I mean, the argument for pedophilia is that I would say that they need to be kept away from children because, I mean, they could be pose a danger to unconsenting children.
But you see, then we get the issue of, well, why is that an issue of consent?
Well, I mean, I wasn't, intending to discuss consent. I'm just trying to ask you about whether or not you think that having a set of feelings, how it makes sense to even designate, having a particular set of feelings.
Well, what you're doing is trying to establish right and wrong without God. And the only thing that you can do is offer subjectivity. Subjectivity is ultimately self-refuting. There is no basis for you to say anything is right or wrong. We can discuss various issues, but as I said before, people behave out of their orientation, out of what they behave based on what they believe, what they affirm. Well, the problem with atheists, the problem with this whole idea is that there is no consistency, no real way for them to determine anything right or wrong. It just happens to be popular vote or personal preference. And this is wrought with danger. And this is a problem because there's no reason to say that when the homosexuals get marriage redefined, there's no reason to say that you can't also use the same arguments for pedophilia. If you say consent's an issue, why is consent the dividing line? What gives them the right to say, no, it's at consent? It's arbitrary. And they don't realize they're being arbitrary. And I mean, this always self-destructs. It just takes time.
Well, I mean, it would be arbitrary in the same sense that I guess interracial marriage would be arbitrary. Because, I mean, it depends on the standpoint you're already taking. I mean, you're already taking a sort of normative stance as regard to what marriage is. Someone could, define it and say that, it's between two people of the same race, as R.J. Rushdoony, in fact. I'm sure you know about him.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, in Numbers chapter 12, Moses married a Cushite woman. She's from Ethiopia.
Yeah.
No problem. I have a daughter who's very attracted. I'm white. My daughter's white. She's very attracted to black guys. Okay, I don't care. So what? As long as he's a good Christian man, whatever. But you see, the issue of orientation is not a justifiable basis by which we can say something is or is not right or wrong. It just isn't. Because what has to happen is the homosexuals can say, I'm born this way, therefore it's okay. And society needs to help me out with this. And pedophiles can say, well, I'm born this with my orientation. And they'll say, well, it's okay for me, but not for you to have your orientation be protected by society. Why? Because it's an issue of consent. Is it? What if a 12-year-old consents? What if a 10-year-old consents? Well, now it has to be of a certain age. Really? Why? Because we're trying to hold that our sexual perversion is acceptable, but yours is not. Based on what? Their personal orientation. It becomes subjective all over, and you cannot defend it as being valid.
Well, I think the issue with that is just trying to keep kids safe, but that's an entirely different issue.
But that's subjective. What is safe? Because what if a child who's 10 years old loves to have sex with an adult because it makes the child feel safe? There are arguments like this are going to be raised, and they are being raised, but a lot of them are being silenced because they don't suit the agenda of the people in control.
So what would you say to a Christian who is one of them in the documentary I was watching, it's on Vice News if you're curious, said that, her parents were Christian and they sent her to a deliverance service?
I would say, and this is, I'm just going to make a confession about Christianity here. A lot of Christians don't know what they're doing and don't understand what the reality of the Scriptures really teach in a lot of ways. And so they they misuse and abuse Scripture and make a lot of mistakes. That's a fact.
So, wait, are you, I still don't, I mean, are you saying that the Christians who did that were abusing Scripture by taking her to a deliverance service?
I wouldn't know unless I know more details, because I can't give a generic statement about something that you, I'm not accusing you of anything, but it's secondhand or thirdhand, whatever, has repeated to me in a summarized view. So I'm not able to just make a statement. Usually what happens when I talk to people who have issues, I'll get details from them because there's a lot of details that need to be known. And I'm not trying to excuse this or get out of it. It's just, that's just the way it is. Generically speaking, I'm just saying that a lot of Christians just don't know. Just because someone might be fat or skinny, you don't take them to a minister and say, cast a demon of fatness out of them. It's like, come on.
Well, actually, some parents, I'm an atheist, but I was raised Pentecostal. So they fully believe in that, and that's not out of reach for...
yeah, I know. There are Christians who teach, there are people who claim to be Christians and stuff, who say that you can be demon-possessed as a Christian. No, you can't. There's lots of things. I'm a theologian, and I debate with them, and that's an in-house issue. But you know what? You make a good observation in that you're seeing that, what do you do with a Christian who says, you got the demon of homosexuality in there, and we got to cast the demon out? Well, is it biblically possible that there could be demons that promote homosexual behavior? Yes, it is possible biblically, because we have accounts, demonic accounts recorded in Scripture where people do various things that are not good. So is it possible? I would say within the realm of possibility from what Scripture said, yes. Does it mean that every homosexual is demon-possessed? Not at all. You know, I wouldn't say that. I'm just talking about, is it possible biblically? According to Scripture, that's in the realm of possibility, but it doesn't mean that's the case. So if someone's struggling with homosexuality, if one of my children were, let's just say, I just talk to the child and love the child and would say, oh, I got to cast a demon out of you. You know?
Well, what would you say? I mean, I'm just asking for your advice on this particular issue.
I say, well, why do you feel that way? What's up? What do you think? Do you think it's healthy? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's right? I'd see what's inside the child. I still love that child.
So would you recommend a counseling service, or, I mean, how would you, because I told you I know people who are gay. I'm not gay myself, but I just don't see what sense it would make, or even how I would go about, even when I was well, I mean, you don't believe that I was a Christian, but when I claimed to be, I still didn't understand it, because, you know, even having been told that it was wrong, I still didn't understand how it could be.
It's a moral issue. It's morally wrong, and it's unhealthy. Homosexuality is unhealthy.
No, I'm talking about specifically in regards to just the sexual attraction, because I didn't feel that
it's wrong because it violates the nature of God. It goes against God's nature. That's why the orientation itself is wrong.
So you're saying that God is a straight white male, or is God's heterosexual?
Let's just try another question. Come on, you can do better than that one.
No, I'm just asking, because when you say, that's another thing that people say, that there's this guy who says that, you know, homosexuality is like a syntax distortion, I know, in God's consciousness and things like that. Do you believe that, I mean, do you believe that God is heterosexual, I guess, is what I'm trying to say? Because I'm really trying to get to the core of this issue. I know I'm just sort of, like, I'm not trying to mock you or anything. I want to understand.
Homosexuality is a sin because it goes against the nature of God, and it also goes against the created order that God has revealed. Nature of God is that he is holy and pure and righteous. He reveals what that is to us in the Word of God and in the person of Christ. And so in the Word of God, he tells us that he created us for the purpose of multiplying and bringing God glory, but he created us to multiply and be like him in the creation, in the area of being able to create, to do, to govern, to be like him. We can't do that in a homosexual way.
Are you familiar with the organization called Exodus International?
Yes, and the guy who was doing that and working against it admitted he was doing bad stuff, yes.
So, I mean, you've seen the interview with Anderson Cooper, I presume, right?
No.
Okay, well, I mean, he said himself, it was one of the largest reparative therapy organization. I think it was the largest. And he said that, you know, you cannot pray away the gay. You cannot
I don't believe that.
Reverse your sexual orientation.
Yeah, I don't affirm that, because he's saying you cannot do this in all. Because I think more logically and critically than a lot of people do, in that you cannot pray that away. How do you know you cannot? You're saying in every instance of every prayer ever that it cannot change anybody, because that means there is no God. Because prayer appeals to God. Can it, if God exists, can prayer through God change someone? Well, of course. Why not? You can't say it never does or can't ever. It's just not logical to say that. That you can't pray it away. What he means is, normatively speaking, you don't just go up to somebody and say, "Here, pray," and it'll be fine. That's what he needs to say. That's what he needs to do. It's just like me with my heterosexual attraction. You know, I want my eyes to be only for my wife. Only. I've been married 28 years. I still pray that, and I still struggle with that occasionally. You don't just pray it away.
Well, I mean, your wife is a smaller case in the context of having heterosexual attraction to begin with, but I mean, this is someone who just in general is attracted to people of the same sex and has been. I mean, do you think that homosexuality is a choice or what?
All our behaviors are choices.
So you think it is a choice?
All of our behaviors are choices.
Okay, but do you think the attraction itself is a choice? I guess.
I can't say. I think in some instances no, in some instances yes. I believe that we can make choices, moral choices, and that we can make choices about what we're going to be attracted to. I believe that we can condition ourselves.
Do you believe that, I mean, you probably believe, since you're a Calvinist, that God made you heterosexual and what regenerated you as a heterosexual?
Well, he can regenerate people as homosexuals too. And my Calvinism isn't, you don't understand Calvinism in that respect of what that means and how it relates to that. But thanks for the attempt, that's nice. But God does not regenerate us or elect us or choose us based on our homosexuality or heterosexuality, but based on his mercy and grace.
But you believe that God can... So, I mean, what do you say to a Christian who says that he's prayed and prayed and prayed and asked God, to get rid of, this sort of attraction?
I say, keep praying. Just like I pray about the issues that I still struggle with and will continue probably to struggle with my whole life. Continue to pray.
All right, Polly, I think we're going to move on now to our next caller, who I think is Ben. Ben and Josh kind of got here at the same time, but we've had Josh on quite a few times, so I don't know who Ben is. So, Ben, we'll let you go first.
Nice talking to you.
Hey, nice
Thanks,
talking
Polly.
to you, too.
Ben, you're up. The vision.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, actually, I'm not an atheist. I'm a Christian.
Okay.
And, I just like the topic, and I'm not from the United States, but I do participate in Google Hangouts. I just wanted to ask something from atheists, because I just really want to know if they really care about homosexuals, or it's because they feel like homosexuals can tend to be in their group in this process of hating Christians. It's just my question, because sometimes I feel like that's the case. That's how I see things. I don't know if Matt wants to comment that. No.
Sure. I was distracted by a phone thing. Sorry. Can you repeat that? My apologies.
Yeah. No, I said that I wanted to ask something, especially for atheists, if whether they really care about gays, because sometimes I feel like they just sympathize with them because most of them they're in the process of like hating Christians in the sense, uh, like, do they really care about the gays? They have anything to do with the gays? Like, do they want them? Because in a sense, I feel like homosexuality too, it's not something that comports with evolution. It's against evolution.
Yeah, it
If you want to
is.
see things too in that perspective.
It doesn't produce offspring, and in order to propagate, there either has to be, as the evolutionists would say, a genetic something. I mean, how is it homosexuality evolutionarily speaking profitable? It doesn't produce, and so you'd think that evolution would wipe it out, but we have homosexuals nevertheless. Why? Well, I believe it's because of the effect of sin all about us and within us. People rebel against God for various reasons. But but is homosexuality
I pretty much
natural?
agree with that, man.
Well, they'll often ask, is it natural? Because it's done in the animal world. Homosexuality is practiced, so therefore it's natural. Well, if it's natural and it's okay to do because it's natural in the kingdom of animals, then it's also natural and good for us to eat our young because that's done in the kingdom of animals. And so there's an inconsistency in which things they want to choose. And so what they're doing is they're choosing those things that satisfy their personal preferences and sexual appetites. And that's what they're choosing. So they're inconsistent. The problem is that when we have people who are trying to dominate others in their own inconsistencies, that's dangerous because it means that they will, for themselves, propagate those things which benefit them and injure another. And yet they're going to do this under the guise of fairness. And we see this exact thing happening now, for example, in Facebook and some other areas where Christians are now being focused on and told that they shouldn't be allowed to vote, should not be allowed to have Facebook accounts, because I heard about this today on Facebook, that there are people who are Christians who say homosexuality is a sin. They're now being reported to Facebook saying, get rid of this person. In other words, we don't want them to voice their opinion. We want them to be silenced. This is what's happening with the liberal left. They do this to those who don't agree with them. This is the problem of the inconsistencies, among other things. Because they can appeal to nature, they can appeal to things, but they're going to be inconsistent in how they do it, all over the board.
Right. That's true. I pretty much agree with you right there. And another question that I would like to ask is if, I don't know, because, I mean, I would have to agree that we have some quote-unquote brothers and sisters, supposedly Christians out there, who try to do harm to homosexuals. But I don't believe that, harm homosexuals, not the agenda of the Christians. The Christians, they're out here to tell the homosexuals that, the homosexual lifestyle, it's a sin, just like any other sin, just like stealing, lusting, and all those kind of stuff. But what happens with homosexuality is that it's being pushed, it's being that tolerating. Now, I don't know, like, how do the atheists or people who defend homosexuality see Christians? Are they seeing Christians as this group of people who wants to eliminate the Christians, wants to eliminate the homosexuals from the face of the planet, or what exactly? Because it seems like that's how they see us. I don't know if you'd like to comment there.
Yeah, well, you're right. They see us like that. They see us incorrectly. And I think that one of the things we need to do now as Christians is get ready for persecution even more. And also, Christians need to know what it is to actually be loving. Now, we can react and say, oh, America's going to hell. Well, Okay, gay America. What are we going to do as Christians? Well, we're to live and to love them. I remember I had a bisexual friend, and he didn't know I knew he was bisexual for a long time. And when he finally told me, I said, "Yeah, I know." And he was blown away because he knew I was going to go into the ministry, go into seminary and stuff, and yet I was still his friend and still loved him. And it really surprised him. Well, this is how we Christians need to treat homosexuals. We need to treat them lovingly and patiently and kindly. But we also need to stand up for our rights, because the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, gives us rights to be able to disagree with them. We don't have any problem with them voicing their opinion. We have a problem with them trying to silence us from doing the same thing. As well as, well, we do have a problem with them practicing their sin. It's going to cost them their eternal souls, so we don't want that for them.
So, does this, since the Supreme Court has ruled that in the United States that homosexual marriage has to apply in all the 50 states, does this mean that the UN too is going to push the same agenda to all the countries around the world? Is that what's going to happen?
It's a spiritual issue, and Jesus said in I forgot exactly where, Matthew 25, I think, he said, "If those days be not cut short, there be no flesh left." And what I believe is that the nature of man is such that in his rebellion against God, he will take incremental steps towards unrighteousness. And in so doing will bring about his own destruction. And this is one of those incremental steps. In America, 1973, it became legal to kill the children in the mother's wombs.
Yeah.
It's now it's legal to have homosexual marriage. It's going to probably, or it might become illegal to own a Bible, because it's going to be considered hate speech. Things progress. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it might very well happen. And we're going to have battles over the Constitution in Amendment 1, which says that we have the right to freedom of religious expression. But what's happening is the homosexual agenda and the homosexual rules and stuff are trumping that amendment. And, I have performed weddings before. And if a homosexual couple comes to me specifically and it says, "Would you perform a wedding?" I'm saying, "No, I would not." Well, why would they want to do that if they did? It's in order to bring a lawsuit, to try and destroy, to attempt to silence the opposition. This is what a lot of homosexuals want to occur. They want not only for the Christians to be silenced, but they want their lifestyle to be promoted and protected and portrayed as being normal, good, and healthy. It's just Isaiah 5:20, "Beware and be weary of those who call good evil and evil good." This is what's happening in America. Let's just say gay, the United States of Gay America. That's what it should be called, United States of Gay America. The Christians have a larger percentage of population than the homosexual community does. And yet, the Christians are the ones who are portrayed as idiots, wackos, losers, bigots, etc. on TV. And the homosexuals are always portrayed well. They want fairness. No, they don't. The homosexuals really want fairness. They should be saying, "Why are you not representing the Christians properly and fairly?" They don't do that. It's because they're not interested in fairness. They're interested in the promotion of their sexual behavior. That's
Hey,
all.
Matt. I have a
Yeah,
question.
just final word.
Sure.
Just
Go-
final words here. Excuse me. Just final words, and I'll just leave. And another thing that I wanted to say is that I'm seeing United States, self-destructing itself, just like Ben Carson once said.
Yeah, it's,
Like the Roman Empire self-destructed itself with the moral problems and stuff,
Well-
and that's exactly what's happening in the United States. But
That's
why
right.
exactly I care about these hangouts? I care about these hangouts because many countries around the world look at United States as a role model in a
Not
sense.
anymore.
I don't live. I'm not from United States. I'm not from United States. And at the end of the day, I'm seeing like every country, my own country is like looking at United States as a role model. Now, if United States fails, the whole world is going to fail. So if United States start with this kind of stuff, what is going to happen with these little countries that depends on them? You know, they're going to force them, just like they did in many countries around the world. In my country, for example, right now, abortion is allowed. We have some serious problems with poverty, but they're allowing abortion with problems of poverty instead of education. You know, that's all I wanted to say, and I want to thank you, Matt Sleek, Bible Thumping Wingnut, for giving me this opportunity.
Ben, thanks for showing up, man. Appreciate the contribution. Our next contestant is someone that we're familiar with here on the Bible Thumping Wingnut Show. The Realistic Nihilist is his username. Realistic Nihilist, you are next. Go ahead and address Matt Slick.
Well, as I understand, Matt's a Calvinist, right? So whatever objections I render are probably going to be pretty weak because he's a Calvinist, right? So what I wanted to say is you want to say that behaviors are dictated by desires, that one does what one desires to do, right? Or is that one is going to be made in accordance with their desires, right?
People behave according to what they want, what they desire, right?
Right. Do you think that people are responsible for their desires?
That's an interesting question. Responsible for their desires. That's an interesting question. I have to think through that. I would say at the very least they're responsible for how they act on those desires.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. But I guess I wouldn't. I don't know how you would. I don't know how you would feel this, because, like I said, Calvinism is confusing. It's a wildly unpopular Christian worldview, right?
No, it's not wildly unpopular. It's quite popular, actually, and it's growing. And it's not confusing. It's very logical. And incidentally, my Calvinism has nothing to do with the logic of your arguments.
Well, all I'm trying to say is that if someone has the desire to engage in homosexual actions, right, and say they don't desire not to, and they're not responsible for that desire, morally speaking, right, then how could they be morally responsible for engaging in homosexual actions, right?
Because God is a standard of righteousness. Whether or not someone has a desire or not a desire, they make choices, and they behave in a manner that's either consistent or inconsistent with God's revealed character. And so if they act in a manner inconsistent with Him, then they violated His nature. They have sinned against Him. I'm born with the orientation for self-protection, and lying is part of that. So I have the desire to lie to protect myself, but I don't lie. I'm responsible for how I behave and how I carry out what I am born as and with, and etc.
Right, but this is the same thing that you said to Polymath when he was on, right? You just have a desire that overrides your desire to lie, right? Your desire to be in line with it. Well, you can imagine an agent who doesn't have that desire, right? So how can he be responsible? How can the agent that doesn't have the desire to do anything but engage in homosexual acts, say, for example, right? I mean, we can grant for the sake of argument that that's inconsistent with the nature of God or whatever. But how is he going to be responsible for that act? Because the only way you're grounding responsibility is you're saying, look, I'm acting in accord with my desire to do the righteous thing. But if a person doesn't act in accord with it because he has no desire to do the righteous thing, then how is it that he is responsible?
Whether or not he's able to and whether or not he desires to does not change the fact that God is a standard of righteousness. In 1 Peter 1:16, God says, "Be holy, for I am holy." He sets himself up as the standard of righteousness. Whether or not you or I are capable of rising to that level of requirement that God has does not mean that God is not who he is and that God is not the standard of righteousness. Period. That's the answer. That's the biblical, that's the Christian answer. He is the standard. So I must adhere to what he requires. If I fail to do that, I've sinned. Whether or not I'm able to or not is irrelevant, because God is the standard. If my desire is to lust after women and in my mind fornicate with them, commit adultery in my mind with them, I'm still responsible. Whether or not I can resist that successfully or not, because the standard is not me, the standard is God.
But why, I'm asking, why are you ultimately responsible if you can't help but do otherwise, right? In most, in most cases, right? For example, people ground responsibility, at least, well, I'm not really sure. Like I said, this is most Calvinists are not libertarians, right? So libertarians want to ground responsibility on the ability to do otherwise. But if someone can't help but act in that way because of the nature that they have bestowed upon them, I don't understand what it would mean to say that person is responsible. So we can make this analogous to any type of causal disposition, right? We could say the lightning struck the tree instead of the house, right? We don't say the lightning failed to try to strike the house, failed and hit the tree, right? We don't attribute responsibility. We just describe the action. We don't say, well, the lightning ought to have not acted that way, right? We just say it couldn't have done otherwise. We don't attribute responsibility.
So let me ask you a question then. Is it okay to violate God's nature if a person can't help himself?
Well, I don't know what you mean, because I'm not a moral realist, so.
From the Christian perspective, because you're arguing from the Christian perspective, is it okay from the Christian perspective? Let's see how much you understand. Is it okay from the Christian perspective to violate God's nature and go contrary to him just because you can't help yourself?
Well, I would think that God would be responsible for that, right?
I didn't ask that. I asked you a question. Is it okay for someone to violate the nature of God, go against God's will, simply because they can't help themselves?
Yeah, I wouldn't understand what it would be to hold someone morally responsible for that, right?
Okay, then you're not able to have a real discussion about the moral responsibility of God in this respect. If you're going to argue from the Christian perspective, and I give you the same answer two different ways, then you come back and you try and ask the question a third way, I'm going to give you the same basic answer. We've already gone over this. The orientation of a person doesn't excuse the person. God is a standard, not man. Period. Whether or not they're able to adhere to that standard doesn't mean God's standard is altered. He's the standard of holiness. Sin is in the world because of what Adam and Eve did, particularly because of Adam. And the sinful progeny, the sinfulness of the nature of Adam is passed down in creation through all descendants, and that sinful manifestation occurs in different forms. Homosexuality, bisexuality, lying, pedophilia, adultery, various forms that we have our desires to fulfill. God didn't make us like this. He made Adam and Eve good. And when Adam and Eve behaved like atheists, trying to decide for themselves which was right and wrong, that's when sin entered into the world. That's when the problems began.
Well, look, so he made them with the desire to...
he made them good.
Well, if he made them good, and good implies that they didn't have any desires to do evil, then he didn't make them that way, right? Because
he made them good. And they were able to rebel against God even in their goodness.
So what do you mean when you say good? Because you said in accordance with God's nature, right? So you said that they made Adam and Eve in accordance with God's nature. Well,
I didn't say that.
Well, I'm just saying that that's what you said that the good is. The good is in whatever is in accord with God's nature, right?
That which is holy and right and good in that sense, yes. When it says Adam and Eve or God made them good, it just simply says he made them good. It doesn't mean he didn't make them with the capacity to sin. They
weren't immutable. They weren't immutable.
Well, they were good. They were able to rebel against God. So what's all this got to do with? What's your question, though?
Well, I'm saying that you're saying that they didn't make them intrinsically good, right? Because God didn't make them good. He made evil beings. He made beings with evil desires that were discordant with his nature, right? They had desires, and presumably God doesn't have the desire to disobey himself. So he made bad creatures because they already had the desire.
Can you show me scripture where it says God made bad creatures, made people evil? He made them that way?
Well, I'm just following the conceptual links you've given me, right? I'm telling you.
No, you're not. You're not. And then you're saying things that I'm not saying, and I'm asking you to validate it. You're not, and I'm telling you you're not.
I'm
We're just
drawing.
going in circles now.
God, right, exactly, and that's why I'm gonna
I'm drawing.
jump in here. Hold on, because what you're saying is that God put something in them that didn't already exist, right? Like God doesn't put evil desires in the heart of man. That desire exists intrinsically because of the sin nature that they're born with. Now, Adam and Eve did not have that nature, but they were not immutable. In other words, they, unlike us, who are enslaved to sin and dead in sin, actually had choice, and they chose to rebel against God.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is that if what Slick is saying is that he made them good, and what good is in accord with God's nature, right? Then he made them with a capacity that was out of God's nature. That is.
Let me explain it. The goodness that was made in accordance with God's nature was being able to make righteous choices and live in a righteous manner. And because they were free and free will creatures, but not holy by nature, holiness being an attribute of God's existence and quality alone, they did not possess that ability to be holy, which is the inability to sin. Since they were creatures, they weren't made in the holy image of God in that they were themselves were holy. They were then enabled to be able to rebel against God.
Right.
And they sinned.
So he didn't make them good. That's what I'm saying, right? You're just
agreeing. I just told you he made them good. I just explained it. Let me try it again.
And he's gone, because that is how all conversations go with that dude. He's like a greased pig released into an arena of whatever. So our next caller is Deidre, who's been patiently waiting to participate. Deidre, go ahead and address Matt Slick.
Hi, Matt. How you doing today?
I'm fine. Love your cartoon thing there.
Oh, good. I think it's fun. I'm a moderate Christian. Not that I'm moderately in love with Jesus or anything like that, but that I tend to believe in a secular America and stuff. But that's not what I want to talk about right now. I sometimes get accused of being too affirming and too unaffirming. The atheists I encounter say I'm too unaffirming. Some of the fundamentalists I encounter say I'm too affirming. I am somebody that I'm a unicorn here, and I'm just going to bring it out here. So please don't throw knives at me. But I'm a unicorn. I am a person who's been married 13 years, who has always had same-sex attraction. But I'm married to my husband. I'm married to a man. Now, I am somebody who was raised in the Baptist Calvinist tradition, and then I moved to Methodism. I struggle with the attitudes of churches who treat people like me, not because it's a sin. What I'm asking is that we are especially bad, and that's the message that I get from a lot of Christians. And I don't know if that's the message that Matt gives or anything like that, but when you run into somebody that does struggle with same-sex attraction, and it might not ever go away, but you pray through it and whatever, that you know the things that you're saying. What do you say to them? Because suicide rates are very high, and you'll see sometimes parents that maybe do love their children, but they're desperate and they're afraid for their eternal soul, so they'll cast them out of the house, and they'll kind of do desperate things. How do you treat people who say that they're struggling with this issue and that they're trying to put up a good fight, and they're not necessarily embracing it and saying, you know, whatever, I don't care. How do you treat those people? Or like, I don't know how to word that in the question because I'm kind of
that's good. This is fine. You want to know how I treat them?
Yes.
I treat them with patient, loving kindness, with a sympathy that they're struggling with sin. That's it.
Okay. Do you think it's especially worse than any other?
If they approve of it and give into it and promote it, then the scriptures say that there's a judgment upon them. Technically speaking, some sins are worse than others. Jesus even said so. The one who delivers him over to the Jews has the greater sin. There are greater sins. Homosexuality is a greater sin than stealing a paperclip. I can't give you a scale of which ones are worse or not, but it's a sin.
Mm-hmm. I see in the side chat somebody said suicide rates are also high among pedophiles. That is always the go-to thing. If you're gay, then you're a pedophile. Then there's the slippery slope.
No.
If you're gay, then you're a bestiality. Here's the thing. This is kind of where I kind of struggle with. We're very concerned about the heart and the state of the heart, right? As Christians, I think a lot of us are concerned with our own heart. And sometimes we'll project that what's in your heart, and we might project it on other people. And that can be something that I struggle with. I think that I feel like some people struggle with it with me. But here's the thing, that the slippery slope. If you're gay, then this, then this, then this, then this. Don't you think that just piles on to people's, the strain that people already feel? Like that you're just okay.
I think it's unfortunate now, because I can talk. Hold on, let me clear my throat again. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. I think it's unfortunate that what's happening, for example, in the early part of the show, I'm talking about the dangers of homosexuality, this law, the persecution. It makes me mad. I'm upset by it, and I really am. Let's say you moved in next door. I found out you are who you are and everything. Okay. I don't know if you got kids. I'd say, hey, well, if you need me to babysit, let me know. Or come on over for barbecue. Okay, even if you're a full-blown homosexual, I'd still say, come on over for barbecue. I treat people the same. I do. Because that's how we're supposed to treat people as Christians. Let me tell you, Deidre, in church, there are just far too many Christians who look down their noses on everybody else, because Christians are often myopic, narrow-minded, bigoted, untrained, immature. I've suffered at the hands of Christians for my various theological beliefs. I could tell you stories, and I could tell you some stuff, and seriously, bad stuff. But yet, it doesn't mean that it's not true. I'm just telling you, I've suffered too. If you're suffering at the hands of Christians, you go to church, and they look down at your nose because they know you're bisexual, and they don't want to treat you normally, well, you know what? They're wrong for doing that. They're wrong for doing that. If I were to sit with some of them, and let's say, we're all in a room, and they were getting on you, I would jump in and say, well, let me ask you, what struggle do you have? At least this woman here is married and apparently is faithful to her husband. I don't know all your questions.
I've only been with one person. Yep.
Okay. And this woman is doing the right thing in a difficult situation and being faithful. And I don't know if you have kids. You have kids?
No kids.
Okay. And I'd say, well, no kids. Okay. But faithful to her husband and struggling against this. That's a godly attitude to have, that you recognize a sin in yourself, as I do. I mean, I got sins, and we struggle against them. If anybody's going to look down their nose, they look down at their nose at various people because, well, your sin is not as socially acceptable as mine. And a lot of times Christians need to have their heads, pounded up against a doorpost. Stop it. And unfortunately, this is the image a lot of Christians are perceived as. And I try and teach people how to be more patient and kind. Believe it or not, I actually do. Yeah, that's right, Matt Slick, believe it or not. I actually do try and teach people to be more patient and kind with others who disagree. So I'm sorry that, if you're going to church and they're looking down their nose at you, and they know you're bisexual and you're attracted to the other, but you don't practice it. If I knew you in church, I'd be glad to have you in church. I think that's great, praise God. You're struggling against it, okay, and you're conquering it, so to speak. And maybe you might have to go to the cross every single day in confession. Does that glorify God? Yes, it does. Because in your dependence on the blood of Christ, as you recognize your sin, and you go to Him all the time, you are bringing glory to Him because you are depending on Him and leaning on that sacrifice. If you're doing that, that would bring glory to Him. Praise God.
Do you know who Cy Rogers is?
Cy Rogers? No.
Well, I don't know if you know Exodus Ministries, but they failed and closed their doors. But he was part of that at one point. He wasn't somebody that was running it, but he was part of it. And he is an ex-gay speaker. And Cy Rogers says God would rather have you messy than not have you at all. What do you think of that?
I like that. I consider myself a broken vessel, and I use that term. I actually have autism and I have Asperger's. I'm a broken vessel, and yet God is using me. I like messy people because they're the ones who are trying to live their faith and are failing sometimes in the process. I have this illustration, of two boys coming out the front yard. They're playing with a dog, and they got a ball in their hand, and they throw it over the fence, and it goes over too far, and the dog goes over the fence. They can't follow. They come traipsing through the house at 80 miles an hour with the mud on their shoes, knocking a glass of water over in the living room as they go out the back door. Life is messy sometimes, but that's what life is. And we Christians, we fail. And I don't know if you can see this. Let me show you something. Can you see the camera?
Yes, a broken jar.
This is an actual wine goblet from 330 BC, southern Italy, plus or minus 10 years. It's authentic. And I like this thing because it's broken. I like that hole that's missing. I like the foundation isn't quite right. I like that divot is right there. For some reason, I'm drawn to it. And I like it. I like the way it feels in my hand as well. It's authentic and it's real, and I keep it around because it reminds me of me. Because I'm broken. If you have a struggle with that particular sin, boy, have I got some struggles that I'm dealing with, some sins that I've been struggling with my entire Christian life, that I've had little victory over. And let me say, I need to rephrase that. The frequency of the sin is getting further apart, and the desire for that sin is lessening, but it's still there. Sins, not just one, but there's several. And I'm being used of God. If you're putting your faith, your trust in Christ, God in flesh, died on the cross, rose from the dead, and you're putting your faith, your hope in Him, and you're giving yourself to Him as the messy, broken vessel that you are, He can use you. Unfortunately, sometimes Christians, they're the ones who shoot their own wounded. As I like to say, the Christian firing squad is in a circle. We have this great forgiveness of Christ, and we want it for ourselves, but we want to judge others because your attraction to the same sex is not socially acceptable. Well, if you're ever in Boise, you're welcome to come over to my house with your husband. We'll cook you some hamburgers or steaks out back, and we'll talk. And you'd find that I wouldn't treat you any differently than some other friends I've got who are heterosexual. There'd be no difference. You wouldn't be able to tell. And there wouldn't be any attitudinal difference either. There would be a pastoral concern for you in that sin. It's the same there would be for anybody that I knew had another sinful issue, that I would say, how is that going? Because I care about them, and that's what we're supposed to be doing as Christians.
Awesome. That's all I wanted to know. I kind of wanted to see the human side of Matt Slick. The less logical side.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'm real compassionate and stuff like that. It just doesn't come out too much in situations like this. I'm always in battle. And people who meet me often say after a little bit, you are a lot nicer than I ever thought you would be. And they thought I would just rip them up. It's just that I'm people are attracted to me in the sense that they want to argue. That's what they see. Okay? And hold on a sec. I got to show you. Hold on. 1 sec. I got to show you something. All right? I want you to see another human side of Matt Slick, okay? All right? Look at this. Can you read that?
Lower it a little bit. How to woo and win women by being an obnoxious jerk. Oh, look at that.
Who's the author?
By Matt Slick.
There you go. All right. So I care about people, have a good sense of humor and stuff like that. It's just that a lot of times people just don't see the other side because that's all they're seeing is me battling and battling. And it's just one of the actually, dead serious, it's one of the issues I have to struggle with. It's a real struggle that sometimes I argue more in my flesh than I'm depending on the Holy Spirit. It's one of the sin problems I've got. Now, is that a great sin? I would say so. Is it greater than yours? Maybe, maybe not. But I have this pride thing, this ego thing, that I'm always trying to battle, and it's touched by sin, even though I want to use it for God's glory. We have our struggles. That's why I don't point fingers at people. I mean, I do. You're a heretic. You deny the Trinity. You're wrong. I mean, I'll do that. That's doctrinal. When it comes to the issue of struggling with sins, I don't point people. Yeah, you got an issue. Okay, me too. Let's talk. Same formula, different variables. Okay.
Cool beans.
That help?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, just because I was curious. But
Okay.
Thanks,
thank you.
Deidre.
I'm gonna head out. So.
Okay.
Matt, that's a really important distinction, I think, that you made, is those who struggle with their sin. And you had this conversation, I don't know if it was a week or two ago, with Aaron on the air here, about those who struggle with sin versus those who just run headlong into it, right? And our response as Christians should be different, you know? I mean, sure, both are sinners, and then I'm speaking in terms of how we interact with unregenerate. The unregenerate who is feeling a sense of guilt and shame over their sin versus the unregenerate who is just running headlong into sin without a care in the world. There's two different responses there, isn't it?
Right, and the ones who come in who promote homosexuality, who want to battle with me and promote it, I'm going to battle them. The ones who are struggling with it, I'm going to counsel them.
Right, that's right.
Put my arm around them and say, I hear you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I thought you were going to pull out the What They Believe book off the shelf.
No, I only like good books, so. Andrew's going, what?
Where's Andrew? Where are you, Andrew?
Actually, I read it. It was fine. I read through some of the stuff. It was good.
Do you have the hard copy yet, or do you just have the ebook?
No, I have the hard copy. Yeah.
Did he autograph it for you?
I don't know. I'll go check it out. It's over there on the shelf. I can find it. People ask
you
me
know, it's worth less if he wrote on it.
Worth less. He soiled it. That's right.
He soiled it.
I like that. Yeah. Hey, you missed an interesting week on the Wingnut Wall, Matt, on our Facebook group, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you just chose not to participate.
I've been out at the middle of Utah, the Manti Mormon Miracle Pageant, standing out in 97-degree heat on black pavement, holding up signs and talking to unbelievers.
Awesome. Yeah, we were invaded by Aryans. We had 100 Aryans join the group. Literally, after your hangout last weekend with that other Aryan guy.
Let's get him back.
We could. So we have another caller who's been holding here who has a pride flag as part of the avatar named Sean. I think, Sean, would you like to unmute your mic and address Matt Slick?
Yes. Thank you. Nice meeting you. I do promote the passage of the recent law that allows people who love each other to be recognized as same-sex officially married couples. My sister has been married to her wife, and now it is recognized in all of the states, and I think that's a good thing.
Wait. Good. You mean moral good, or you just like it?
I would say it's a good thing for, what do you mean moral good?
You use the word good, that's associated with morality.
Oh, yeah, it's moral. When
It's
two
a moral
people
good-
who
morally good thing? Okay.
when two people who love each other can be recognized as being part of the society that they live in, sure.
Oh, okay, so no problem when a 50-year-old man and a 12-year-old little boy want to get married because they love each other, right? That's good.
No. My sister is, I think she's 35, and her wife is 34.
That's nice. But you said
that's what
when
what I was referring to.
I know, but then you said when two people who love each other are allowed to be blah 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 blah. Okay, let's take your principle and apply it. So why are you having a double standard?
Yeah, that's why I said it's good that they're now able to be married, a 35 any 38-year-old woman. You're wanting to try to run somewhere else with it. I'm just saying that the law of consenting of age adults, the passing of it, is a good thing. Would you like to say why it's not?
No. You say, what you're saying is you like it. You can't say it's good because you're an atheist. You can say you like it and you approve of it. Okay, that's what you want to do. You can approve of it. But you can't say it's morally good because you don't have a standard by which you can judge what is morally good. So, it's no big deal.
It's good that they fought very hard to be able to get married, and they are happier now that they've been able to get married. So yes, morally good.
Oh, morally good. So if it's morally good, then everybody ought to agree with them.
Well, now legally everybody does.
No, legally everybody doesn't. But morally, because you say it's a good thing, so ought all people now agree that homosexual marriage is good, is a morally good thing. Because if it's good, then they morally are obligated to believe that, right?
Yeah, the Supreme Court just passed that we as a nation agree.
You're not listening.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Say it one more time. Let me.
You said it's morally good. It's a moral issue. It's good. If it's morally good, then is it not true that all people morally ought to agree with homosexual marriage?
I don't even know if morals really cross into this. I don't see how you're making the connection. Help me out.
You said it was good.
Yeah. I mean, chocolate is good. It's not a moral issue.
No, chocolate is something. You're just using good in an ambivalent way. So you're not talking about morality here, are you?
No, you're talking about morality.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I know I am. So it's not a moral issue for you. It's just a legal one.
Isn't that what I said? I thought that's what I said. Yes.
Okay, so let's say hypothetically in 25 years, America realizes what a bad decision that court case was, and then the government says no, homosexual marriage is not good. So then you'd agree that that was the right thing to do, also.
Well,
the government decided it, therefore, right?
I'm saying it's good, and I gave you my reasons why it was good.
No. So, because the Supreme Court passed it. So the Supreme Court later. No. Why is it
no?
Good?
Because once they were in a society where sometimes it was accepted whether they were a couple or not, and sometimes they weren't, depending on their location. But now, as a nation, we, as the people, and through the Supreme Court, have decided that their marriage is legal and should be recognized.
So in other words, all you're giving me is it's just your personal subjective preference that you like it. That's all it is.
My personal subjective preference didn't make the front page of the paper. I mean,
we're talking about what did make the front page, and you're talking about it. And all you're giving me is you just like it. That's all, which is fine. You just like it. Okay, like it. No big deal.
No, I'm talking about a huge portion of our society that is now not as easily suppressed as they were before.
Proportion? What's the percentage of the huge proportion that you're talking about?
I'm talking about the gay and lesbian community.
What's the huge proportion? Huge. What is that?
Oh, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. It's quite a few.
3% at best.
That's
or homosexual.
That's a pretty big.
That's huge. Would you say it's not huge? That's not huge, is it?
I'd say that's well, maybe what percentage of the population has Asperger's, but yet it's still something, right? So does that make it an irrelevant topic or an irrelevant issue to talk about?
You said it's a
huge
population,
right.
and obviously
numbers.
It's not the case.
Right.
3% is not huge, but we do know there's more Christians in America, percentage-wise, than homosexuals. So since huge proportion is what you seem to appeal to, so then shouldn't you be consistent and say that the Christians should be getting their fair due and process and promotion and everything else, right?
I wasn't really appealing to you. Are you wanting to argue, or I don't understand?
I'm just trying to show you're not being consistent.
Oh, well, I mean, if you think that's what you've done.
Yeah, I'm showing you you're not consistent.
I think it's on the record that that's exactly what he's done. So with that, I'm going to thank you, Sean. We are going to go off air because we've been on air for a long time, and Tim is going to kill me because he has so much editing to do. So, as usual, we're going to leave the link available in the comment feed. So if people still care to join, they certainly can. We have opened it up pretty much to anybody. So I'm going to go off air. Matt,
I'll stay for a while.
We have 56 people viewing. This is an important issue. Can you just share with them the hope that lies within you before we go off air?
The only hope we have for a future, not just a future before our hearts stop beating, but the eternal future of our souls. The only hope we have is in the person of Jesus Christ, who is God in flesh, who bore our sin in his body on the cross after living a perfect life, and that he died a very loving death, a very painful death, and that in so doing, he provided the way by which our judgment could be avoided. Our judgment against God, our judgment by God against us, for us breaking his law, for sinning, for lying. That hope that we have is in Jesus. He's in us as Christians. He's outside of you if you're unbelievers, and that's the difference. Because he's outside of you as unbelievers, you don't have the mind of Christ and you don't understand. But our only hope is in Jesus Christ, who died on the cross, who was buried, and 3 days later rose from the dead, proving, that's resurrection, proved that what he said was true, and what he did was true. That's why the resurrection is so important. It's the validation that his message and his work is true. Without that resurrection, no problem. You can do whatever you want. But since he rose from the dead after 3 days, you don't rise from the dead for 3 days. And since he did that, he proved what he said and affirmed, taught is true. And therefore, you better believe him, because he also said there's judgment coming. So you better believe in what he said. Otherwise, you'll be judged.
Amen. Well, thanks everyone for listening. And
are you still here,
Andrew? I'm gonna mute you.
That didn't work.
And hangout etiquette whatsoever.
That didn't work.
I'm listening.
Etiquette.
Andrew doesn't have any etiquette.
Don't make me eject you. I'm about to go off the air here. So thanks everyone for checking us out. You can look at Matt's website. That's carm.org, carm.org. You can check out past podcasts by going to BibleThumpingWingnut.com. Check out the archive page. You can see Andrew Rappaport's new book at strivingforeternity.com. It's called What Do They Believe? And let's see, who else can we promote in here? We have John Brady. His website is putitingear.com. Who else has a website? Anyone want to promote themselves before I go off air? Okay, I guess we're done here.